Okay, here we are in May, about to turn in our armature project, and I've got to admit this has been kind of fun. It's been challenging, of course. Uh, it's been a lot of work, which is good, and a lot of learning, which is good as well. So without further ado, let's move forward, and I'll present my armature project to you. And we're starting off with the classic proportions, I believe. And my model is modeled after George Clooney, and he has what we call a diamond-shaped head, what I call a diamond-shaped head. And I put the convex concavus a little bit later in the program, and I'll show that to you with his pictures. But this is my final armature. Okay, now let's go to natural facial markings. As you can see, he had quite a pronounced phaletrum, the oblique palpebral sulcus, and I kind of, now that I looked in the daylight on this armature, I can see that my artificial eyelashes were a little bit long on the inside. I should have trimmed those up just a little bit more. But he had a couple of distinct nasolabial folds, and I did try to put some ligature in there, and it doesn't show up very well, but it made a really nice indentation for the fold there. Labiomental sulcus here, submental sulcus down here. These are all his natural facial markings. Okay, let's move on to acquired. Now with a Hollywood star, I'm sure there were some surgical interventions. However, I feel like George Clooney has aged pretty well, but there are some obvious acquired markings that he has, and it's kind of hard to see here. Now I went out in the sunshine with this, and it shows up pretty well. However, the cap kind of shaded some areas of it. But he does have on his crow's feet with his optic facial sulci, he just has a couple of those. Most men our age, I think George Clooney's 60, 61, I'm 63, a lot of us have 2 or 3 of these crow's feet, but I don't know if it was surgical or if he has just aged well. But on his vertical interciliary sulci, what makes it unique for George is he only has one that's really pronounced. That's on his left side, and the one on the right is barely noticeable, and only has a couple of transverse frontal sulci up here. Okay, here we have the superior palpebral sulcus, and of course his inferior palpebral sulcus for his age looks very good. Nasolabial sulcus here. Okay, buccofacial sulcus, mandibular sulcus. And of course, as we go, he doesn't have much fatty tissue underneath the chin like a lot of men our age do, and cords of the neck down here. All right, supplemental qualities. These turned out pretty well. Once again, my artificial eyebrows kind of went a little bit far inside, but it still turned out pretty well. And the fact that everything kind of lined up pretty well, so I'm fairly pleased with this. So, all right, now let's go back to some early pictures of the armature before we did the eyes. We had the nose and mouth, and here are the markings of the nose with the wings of the nose. These are before I made improvements. I narrowed the wings a little bit for him, and narrowed the nares as well. And of course the phaletrum, he has a pronounced phaletrum. And one thing I like to point out is early, and we're not on the mouth yet, but you can see he has a very thin integumentary lip here, and I'll show you my improvements on that. As you can see, Mr. Schmidt asked me to shorten the gap between the base of the nose and the top of the lip, and I did that here. So you can see that narrowing of that. But okay, All right, let's move on to the mouth, and as you can see, his superior integumentary mucous membrane was very thin. This was before I improved on that. The Felietrum again, hunter's bow. He has a nice pronounced hunter's bow, and his inferior integumentary mucous membrane or the lower lip looks good as well. Okay, the eyes. Of course, this is early in the armature. We have the naso-orbital fossa here that I kind of had to hollow out a little bit more. And again, these are before improvements. Orbital pouch, the palpebra, superior inferior, supraorbital area, and the supercilium. Okay, the ear, which I found to be the most challenging of all the additions. This is our labeled. I put these in, it left these white because they were kind of hard to see with this dark background. Of course, over here against the armature, these show up very, very well. I thought the anti-helix and the cura were hard to manipulate. I had to go back and trim those up, as well as the concha. My concha early was too big, and good advice from Mr. Schmidt allowed me to go in and improve on that, as well as the tragus and the lobe, if you can remember that. Okay, I kind of narrowed the helix a little bit to help on the 2/3 part, and narrowed the scapula just a little bit. But there's another angle of my left ear and what it looks like. Okay, here's Mr. Clooney, and of course we know who this man is. Okay, diamond shaped. Okay, his natural markings, oblique palpebral sulcus here, starting to show a little bit in his age. Nasolabial fold, the angulosaurus sulcus. What makes his kind of unique is his right one dips just a little bit more, and I tried to make that evident with my model as well. Labiomental sulcus is kind of pronounced with his soft tissue of the chin kind of being just a little bit pronounced there as well. Okay, as acquired, just a few of those. There was that vertical interciliary sulci I was telling you about, where he just has one that's fairly pronounced, and of course only a couple of transverse frontal sulci. As you can see, he only has a couple of crow's feet, which again for his age, I don't know if this was cosmetic surgery or what, but I feel like he's aged pretty well for his age. Okay, here's a convex concave shape of a profile of his head. It was kind of difficult to find a good profile of Mr. Clooney online. Okay, and here is another kind of picture of the armature with the model. I think a lot of us, I like to think that it looks like him. I probably could have used a little bit more wax through the cheek areas, kind of fill him out just a little bit more. He looks kind of thin or emaciated in this particular model, but I feel like a lot of us were probably just wanting to make our models look human. And kudos to those who actually made their model look exactly like their model. Their armature look exactly like their model. But it was a very challenging assignment, but it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. Okay, and here's the one that I want to put on teams of my model. This is the armature setting on our dining room table, and I guess the reason I wanted to put that is I wonder how many of us use the dining room table for weeks and weeks. I know my wife is ready to get her dining room table back, so hopefully this week we'll get all this cleaned up and get that back to her. Thank you for your time. This has been a great project, and I look forward to possibly uh, restoring a facial part on someone in the future, and I feel confident in doing that. Thank you for your time.